They flew in an ophthalmologist from the Kuwait. They flew in an
Yes, I read this in your book.
to save his eye. He just blinded Lane Morris. These Americans saved his eye. They took him to Bagram. They took him to Guantanamo Bay. They didn't kill him. He's had Red Cross visits, you know, and he has been treated in a way that you said warfare. Yes, the Americans were in Afghanistan in a UN-sanctioned mission. But I've read the Geneva Protocols, and I quote them in my book. To be treated like a prisoner of war, Omar Khadr had to do 4 things, all 4 things. Number 1, he had to bear his weapons openly. Number 2, he had to wear a uniform. Number 3, he had to be part of a chain of command. And number 4, he had to generally comply with the laws and customs of war. To be treated like a soldier, he did none of those 4 things. He was not even a murderer. He was like a terrorist or a pirate, someone outside the law. Yet he was treated with he was given the rights and privileges of a prisoner of war, which the Geneva Conventions do not grant to him. He was not a child soldier as we know it from Africa, a 10 or a 12-year-old kid, kidnapped from his family, hopped up on drugs, given a rifle, told shoot or we'll shoot you. It wasn't that way. In fact, in Afghanistan, in Khost that day, when the Americans surrounded this little fort, they broadcast in various languages, "You can leave now, we'll cease fire. Women, children, men who don't want to fight, leave the fort now, we're going to bomb it in an hour." Plenty did, not Khadr. He stayed because he wanted a day of accession to heaven.
But he was 15 years old.
You know what? Someone murders on the street of Vancouver a few weeks shy of 16, we don't let him free. We try him often as an adult. We do not let, he was 15, yeah, a few weeks shy of 16. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child do not say 15 is a child soldier. It says 14 is. We recruit soldiers that age in our own Canadian military. And there is not a legal convention.
You said he wasn't a soldier.
I don't even think he's a soldier. I think he should have been dealt with like a pirate. Or the phrase outlaw, he was outside the law. I think the Americans were too legally generous to him. You don't win a war with lawyers. You don't send lawyers to have trials in the field of battle. We didn't have trials in the Second World War. When we captured soldiers, we put them in jail till the war was over. Why are we having trials at all? Keep them in jail till the war's over.
Yeah, but is this a war, this war on terror, where you have...
Khadr thinks it is.
When you have an invasion of Iraq without the sanction of the UN Security Council.
I don't want to talk about Iraq. I want to talk about Iraq.
Fair enough.
I want to talk about Afghanistan, a UN-sanctioned mission. This was NATO was there under UN sanction. Khadr was not. Khadr was born in Scarborough, born in Canada, had every privilege, free healthcare, free welfare, free education. His dad had a great job, a degree. Like, this was not a poor, old, marginalized. His father chose evil, and Omar chose the family business. And he chose to... This was not some dumb peasant with the rifle taking pot shots at Yanks. This was someone trained in poisons, trained in building IEDs. He spoke 5 languages. He traveled with his father doing translation and high business for Osama bin Laden himself. That's one of the reasons Khadr is such a rock star at Guantanamo Bay. He has a connection. He's like a made man. He was connected to bin Laden himself. His dad was a hero. He actually notched a kill of an American. And could you imagine this young man, 25 years old, out on the streets, cock of the walk, walking around, yeah, I killed an American, and I'm free, and there's nothing you can do about it, doing the lecture circuit on campus, doing the mosque circuit, maybe like his daddy, on TV as a pundit. He's suing the government. He'll get 10 million bucks. He's going to be welcomed like a ticker-tape parade. That's a promise. Look at Judy Rebick. She's already comparing him to Nelson Mandela.
I have to ask you, because at the end of your book, you raised the prospect of Omar Khadr not being allowed back into Canada. Under this deal with the U.S. government, he's scheduled to come back at any time.
Yes.
How do you think the Conservative government should deal with this issue?
Well, remember how the Conservative government dealt with it from the year 2006 when they took office to 2010, 2011. The same way the Liberals did under Martin. They wanted him down in Guantanamo Bay. Stephen Harper fought it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada not to have to repatriate this terrorist. But then President Obama, newly elected, promised to shut down Guantanamo Bay, promised to get out of the war on terror, asked for a favor. He said, Stephen Harper, I want you to take your terrorists back, just like all the other Western countries have, just like they've let so many of these terrorists go, many of which who have returned to terror, by the way. Now, when the President of the United States asks you to do something, you better have a good reason to say no. And Stephen Harper, in the name of the relations of our two countries, actually voided his entire reputation on tough on terror, tough on crime, truth in sentencing, And he said, yes. And so our foreign minister in the day, Lawrence Cannon, issued what's called a diplomatic note suggesting that we would look favorably on a prison transfer 1 year from that date. That 1 year expired.
So are you suggesting Stephen Harper was soft on crime?
I absolutely am. But here's the thing. There is a law. I did a little looking into it. I'm a lawyer by profession, but I did some research. There's a law called the International Transfer of Offenders Act. Usually it's, you know, some Canadian tourist in Thailand.
Or Conrad Black?
Yeah, well, exactly. Someone who gets into some trouble overseas, wants to come and serve the rest of his sentence back home. Usually it's drugs, you know, and usually it's in an iffy regime.
Maybe it was David Radler would be a better comparison because Conrad Black's not Canadian.
That's exactly the law under which that transfer was approved. Now, there's a checklist in that law. It does not include, does the President of the United States really, really, really want it? The checklist has questions like, is this person a public danger? And I have to say, based on the publicly available facts, in my view, he's dangerous. But I'm not an expert. Michael Wellner is. And a 63-page memo he wrote says this is highly dangerous. But Charlie, there's that 8-hour video interview between Dr. Wellner and Omar Khadr that is powerful, I would imagine, based on the 63-page summary of it.
But the court case, it was deemed inadmissible.
And I don't know the particular reason that interview was not shown to the jury. I don't know that offhand, I'm sorry. But I do know this. Vic Taves hasn't seen that video. Stephen Harper hasn't seen that video. The public has not been able to see that video.
Well, if the Guantanamo hearing, it was deemed inadmissible, why should it be deemed admissible in the event of him being transferred to Canada? Because
Vic Taves has a duty under the law to make a decision whether or not someone is dangerous. And if someone sits down for 8 hours with a psychiatrist and answers questions about violence and history and jihadism and his likelihood to reoffend, that is extremely relevant. And frankly, I don't care if it was admissible in another legal proceedings under another set of laws that have nothing to do with us. We have to determine whether or not he's safe to come back to Canada. Now, I would be happy to have Omar Khadr subjected to another 8-hour interview. I really don't care. But what bugs me about this is that this videotape was withheld from Stephen Harper and Vic Taves when they asked us to take him back. The 63-page report was not shared with our Canadian government either. So the US government, the Pentagon, had this information about Omar Khadr and did not show it to Vic Taves or Stephen Harper before they asked us to take Omar Khadr. That's not even a legal decision. I mean, politicians.
So are you suggesting under this legislation that Vic Taves can say, no, we don't want Omar Khadr to come back into Canada?
In fact, he is the only one who can say yes or no. Now, obviously, Vic Taves answers to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister may direct Vic Taves to answer in a manner that would allow Khadr to come home. But here's my theory. Charlie, I thought that Khadr would be home by now because this 1-year period expired last October. I thought he'd be on a private jet back home right away. Remember, he can't fly commercial. But hang on, it's been 5 months already. 5 months.
Is he on a no-fly list?
Yeah, he's a convicted confessed terrorist. He's on a no-fly list. I wouldn't want to be on a plane with him. I mean, he's got some training. Now, why has Vic Taves waited 5 months? I've got a theory. It's nothing more than that, Charlie. I'd say Obama has a 50-50 chance of being reelected this fall. Well, what happens if...
60-40?
60-40, that's still 40%. What happens if...
70-30 if Santorum's the nominee?
I think there's a 50% chance of President Romney. If they can run out the clock and not decide on this prison transfer agreement until after the U.S. election, if it's a Republican, then there's no IOU chip. Like President Obama holds an IOU chip from Stephen Harper. Harper promised to take this guy. Well, if we make the decision the day after the U.S. election and it's Mitt Romney, no American president's going to be mad at us. I think that's my theory. They're going to run out the clock.
And then he's in jail for 8 years in the U.S.?
That's right. And then we're pretty much going to have to take him because he'll have served his time down there and he is a Canadian citizen. I just want that day of his return to be as far in the future as possible.
Okay. My last question. Mm-hmm. Your last book, Ethical Oil. Mm-hmm. Seen by many as propaganda for the oil industry to affect change, and we've seen the government adopt your messaging there. Is this a propaganda book designed to stop Omar Khadr and to create public momentum and kind of give the Conservative government backbone to do what you think is right?
I write books not because I'm a literary genius. I'm a workable writer. This is not brilliant writing, I'll confess it, Charlie. I write books to change things. I think you know what that's like. I write books because I want to change minds, change policy. I think I've had a small impact on ethical oil. At least the way of looking at oil has changed. I wrote as an intellectual exercise, but since then I've become an out-and-out advocate for the industry. This book was written even more so. This book, I mean, it was on the Globe bestseller list. It's been well received. Thanks. But it only has one test in my mind. Can I convince Vic Taves to say no? This book has been sent to every Minister of Cabinet, and a few of them have tweeted about it. That is the test. Yes, no, is this book a failure? This book is not going to be a massive bestseller. It's not as big, it's not as wide-ranging in interest as, say, energy or oil. It's a narrow focus. This is a sniper shot, to use an Omar Khadr phrase. If we can get the government to say no on that prison transfer, this is the most successful book I've ever written.
Thank you very much, Ezra Levant.
Thanks, Charlie.